Don't talk about our mum like that again, or our dad will deal with you. 6-year-old Ye Jun's voice cut through the elegant murmur of Grandmother Day Ja's lavish 80th birthday celebration, like a blade through silk. Beside him, his twin brother, Min Jun, stood in an identical defensive stance, small fists clenched at his sides, dark eyes blazing with protective fury that didn't belong on a child's face. The crowd of elegantly dressed guests turned as one, conversations dying on lips painted in expensive shades. Crystal champagne flutes paused mid-sip, diamond-laden hands froze in gesticulation, and everyone stared. Because standing there in the doorway, backlit by the massive crystal chandelier, were two small boys who looked exactly like the Han family. The same high cheekbones that marked 4 generations of the Han bloodline, the same aristocratic straight nose, the same sharp jawline that appeared in oil portraits lining the estate's marble hallways. The same dark, penetrating eyes that stared out from business magazine covers and corporate headshots. Even the way they stood, spine straight, chin lifted with unconscious arrogance, shoulders squared, screamed Han legacy. Han Seo-jun's wineglass stopped halfway to his lips, expensive Bordeaux sloshing against crystal. His mother, Han Hye-jin, went absolutely pale, one manicured hand flying to her throat, where a diamond necklace worth more than most houses glittered coldly. His sister, Han Su-ah, actually took a step backward, her Louboutin heel catching on the Persian rug, her carefully made-up face draining of all color. Because it was impossible. Seo-jun had no children, especially with that woman, the American he'd divorced 6 years ago after making her life a living hell, the one who didn't know her place, who thought she could come into the Han family and become the new lady of the house. Who? Hee-jin's voice came out strangled, barely audible over the sudden silence. Who are you? The boys didn't answer her. Their eyes were locked on Seo-jun with a kind of cold assessment that absolutely shouldn't exist in 6-year-olds. I heard you through the window saying bad things about my mother. Ye-jun said, his English accent American but his Korean perfect. I heard every word you said about her. Ye-jun! A woman's voice came from behind the boys, tight with worry but carrying an undertone of steel. Min-jun, I told you to stay inside with Halmione. And then she appeared. The crowd parted like water before a ship's prow, and she walked through with the kind of confidence that money couldn't buy, but suffering could forge. Olivia. But not the Olivia that Seo-jun remembered. Not the quiet, downtrodden woman in simple clothes who'd scrubbed his family's floors and served their meals like hired help. Not the broken girl who'd signed divorce papers with shaking hands and left with a single suitcase. This woman wore a tailored emerald dress that probably cost more than the ones Hee-jin and Su-ah were wearing combined. The kind of understated elegance that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant chignon that showed off a graceful neck adorned with diamonds that caught the light like captured stars. She moved with the confidence of someone who knew her worth, who had claimed her power and never looked back, who walked through rooms like she owned them, because maybe she did. Olivia. Her name fell from Seo-jun's lips like a prayer or a curse. He couldn't tell which. She looked at him then, and her expression was so cold it could have frozen the Han River in the middle of summer. There was no anger in her face, no pain, no trace of the girl who'd loved him so desperately. She'd lost herself trying to be perfect for him, trying to earn his family's acceptance, trying to become someone worthy of the Han name. Just blank, polite assessment. The way you might look at a stranger at a networking event and find them thoroughly unimpressive, not worth the effort of remembering their name. Seo-jun, she said, her voice carrying that same neutral politeness, the tone one might use to greet a distant acquaintance of minimal importance. It's been a while. Beside her walked a man Seo-jun recognized immediately, and recognition brought a cold dread that spread through his chest like ice water through veins. Kang Do-yun. The name alone was enough to make Seo-jun's hands tremble. Do-yun was the self-made billionaire CEO of Do-yun Industries. The man who'd somehow managed to outmaneuver, outthink, and outplay every single move Han Industries made in the Korean tech sector. The competitor who now controlled enough of the market that he could make or break companies with a single phone call, destroy reputations with a well-placed word, shift entire industries with a strategic investment. The man Seo Jun's father had tried to buy, intimidate, and destroy through every legal and quasi-legal means available, and failed at all three. Do-yoon placed his hand on the small of Olivia's back, the gesture casual, comfortable, unconscious. The kind of touch that spoke of years of intimacy, of a relationship so secure it didn't need to announce itself. He was taller than Seo Jun, broader in the shoulders, with the kind of quiet confidence that came from actually earning your power, instead of inheriting it from ancestors who'd done the real work. His custom-tailored suit probably cost more than Seo Jun's car, and when he looked at Seo Jun, his dark eyes held nothing but contempt, barely masked by social politeness. The twins immediately ran to their mother, flanking her like small guards, their small hands gripping her dress. Olivia's hands settled on their shoulders, and the four of them stood together, a united front that made it absolutely clear who belonged to whom. "What is she doing here?" Hyejin's shrill voice shattered the stunned silence like breaking glass. "How dare you show your face in this house? You seem to have grown wings and forgotten your place. I will show you—" "I invited them." The voice was thin, weakened by illness, but it carried the weight of absolute authority that made everyone in the room freeze mid-breath. Every head turned toward the wheelchair positioned near the bay windows, overlooking the estate's manicured gardens. Park Dae-ja sat wrapped in elegant silk, her once robust frame now frail from the pancreatic cancer that was slowly claiming her life, eating away at her from the inside. But her eyes were sharp as broken glass, clear as winter sky, and absolutely unyielding. "I invited Olivia," Dae-ja repeated, her voice surprisingly strong for someone the doctors had given 3 months to live. "I invited her and her husband and my great-grandsons to my 80th birthday celebration. Because unlike every single person in this room, unlike every member of my blood family, she actually gave a damn whether I lived or died." Hyejin looked like she'd been physically slapped, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. "Mother, you can't possibly. This woman is not family. She was barely even a proper wife to Seo Jun. She was family for 18 months, Dae-ja interrupted, her voice hardening to something that could cut diamond. 18 months where she showed me more genuine kindness, more real care, more human compassion than any of you have shown in 18 years. So yes, she is my guest. She and her beautiful family are my honored guests. And if anyone has a problem with that, you know where the door is. Leave my party." The silence that followed was deafening, heavy with shock and barely suppressed rage. Olivia moved then, gliding across the ballroom floor with Do-yeon and the twins following like a perfectly choreographed unit. She moved like she owned the space, like she belonged here more than anyone born into it, like she'd earned her right to walk these marble floors. When she reached Dae-ja's wheelchair, she knelt down gracefully, taking the old woman's frail, age-spotted hands in hers with infinite gentleness. "Halmione," Olivia said softly, and the Korean term of endearment, grandmother, made several people in the crowd gasp audibly. "You look beautiful. That color is perfect on you. And you look happy," Dae-ja said, her stern expression melting into something soft and tender, something none of her actual family had seen in years. "That's all I wanted, to see you happy, to see you thriving, to see you loved the way you deserve to be loved before I die." "Don't talk like that." "I'm 80 years old and full of cancer, child. We both know I won't see another birthday. Let's not waste time with polite lies." Dae-ja's eyes moved to the twins, who'd positioned themselves on either side of Olivia like small, fierce bodyguards protecting what was precious to them. "Hello, my darling boys." "Hello, Halmione," they said in perfect unison, their Korean accent better than their mother's, the result of weekly video calls with their great-grandmother since they were old enough to speak. "It's good to see you again. You look very pretty." Again. The word hung in the air like an accusation, like a bomb waiting to detonate. Again? Heejin's voice pitched higher, climbing into registers usually reserved for tea kettles and emergency sirens. "Mother, you've met these children before? You've been in contact with this woman?" "For 6 years," Daeja said calmly, matter-of-factly, like she was discussing the weather rather than dropping a revelation that made half the room gasp. "After you threw her out of our home like garbage while she was pregnant with twins. My great-grandsons, your grandsons," she said pointedly to Seo-jun's father, Han Sung-min, who'd been standing near the bar looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Your nephews," to Hye-jin and Soo-ah. "Your sons," to Seo-jun, whose face had gone from pale to absolutely gray. Park Ji-woo, Seo-jun's childhood sweetheart and current wife, finally spoke up from where she'd been standing near the bar in a designer dress that showed off her still-perfect figure. Her voice was sweet, concerned, dripping with false confusion that barely masked the fear underneath. "But Mother, how could you believe her so easily? She could be lying to you, taking advantage of your illness and your age to manipulate you. After all, I was the one who was pregnant 6 years ago. Seo-jun divorced her because she couldn't give him children. These boys could be anyone's, but there was never any baby, was there, Ji-woo?" Olivia's voice cut through Ji-woo's performance like a scalpel through tissue, clean and precise and utterly devastating. She stood slowly, gracefully, turning to face the other woman. Every eye in the room swiveled to watch this confrontation between the ex-wife and the woman who'd replaced her. "I'm sorry?" Ji-woo's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in her eyes. Fear, calculation, desperation. "I don't know what you mean. I had a miscarriage. It was very traumatic. The doctors said—" "There was no pregnancy," Olivia said, her voice calm but carrying to every corner of the massive ballroom, reaching even the staff who'd stopped serving to watch this drama unfold. "There was no baby, there was no miscarriage, there was nothing but a very convincing performance and a positive pregnancy test you probably bought off someone who was actually pregnant. Wasn't there?" Ji-woo's face went carefully blank, her smile freezing in place like a mask that couldn't quite fit properly anymore. "That's ridiculous. How dare you accuse me of—" "I have medical records," Do-yeon said calmly, his voice carrying the kind of authority that came from actually having power rather than just pretending to it. He pulled documents from his jacket with the practiced ease of someone who'd been waiting 6 years for this exact moment. 6 years of investigating the Han family's business practices turned up many interesting things, including complete medical histories for everyone in this family. Ji-woo's records show no pregnancy, no miscarriage, no prenatal care, no hospital visits related to pregnancy complications, nothing. He spread the documents across the nearest table, like evidence at a trial, like a prosecutor laying out an unbeatable case. "What you do have," Do-yeon continued, his tone almost conversational despite the devastating nature of his words, "is a receipt for a positive pregnancy test purchased from a website that sells them to women trying to trap partners into relationships. You have text messages to your friend discussing how you needed to act fast before that bitch announces her pregnancy. And you have a very convenient miscarriage that happened with no medical supervision, no hospital visit, no doctor's confirmation. Just your word, which this family accepted without question because it was the outcome you all wanted." The silence was so complete you could have heard a pin drop on the thick Persian rugs, could have heard a heartbeat, could have heard the sound of a reputation shattering into a million irreparable pieces. Ji-woo's face had gone from carefully blank to absolutely stricken, the mask finally cracking to reveal the panic underneath. "That's not— I can explain. You don't understand. Is it true?" The question came from Seo Jun, and his voice was hollow, broken, the sound of a man watching his entire reality crumble around him. Jiwoo, tell me it's not true. Tell me you didn't lie about being pregnant. Tell me I didn't divorce my wife for nothing. I was protecting us, Jiwoo said desperately, her voice climbing, losing all pretense of control or composure. She was going to trap you with a pregnancy. I found a test in the trash. I knew she was planning to announce it. I had to act first. I had to make you choose me before she could manipulate you with a baby. So you lied, Seo Jun said, the words falling like stones. You faked a pregnancy. You manipulated me into divorcing my wife. You let me believe. His voice broke completely. I threw away my marriage for a lie. You threw away your wife for a woman who was willing to manipulate you. Olivia corrected, her voice gentle but firm, like a teacher explaining something to a particularly slow student. The same way you and your family manipulates everyone in your lives. The same way they manipulated me. It's what you do. It's all. You know, it's who you are. To understand how this moment came to be, how the quiet, broken girl became this confident woman facing down her abusers, one must go back to the beginning, to 8 years ago when Olivia's life was a living hell disguised as a marriage. And if you are liking this video, drop a comment right now. Tell me what you think of Olivia so far. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed, because what happens in the next few minutes is going to blow your mind. Now back to the story. Olivia had married Han Seo Jun with hope in her heart and stars in her eyes, genuinely believing that love could bridge the gap between their social classes, their different cultures, their completely opposite backgrounds. She'd met him during her study abroad program in Seoul, a whirlwind romance that had felt like destiny, like the universe aligning to give her something magical. When he'd asked her to move to Korea permanently and marry him, she'd said yes without hesitation, without thinking about the consequences. She'd left behind her life in America, her friends, her career prospects, her safety net, for what she believed would be a beautiful future as the beloved wife of a successful Korean businessman. She'd been catastrophically, devastatingly wrong. From the first day she entered the Han estate as a bride, the family made their position crystal clear. She was not one of them. Her marriage certificate meant nothing to people who measured worth in generations of wealth and bloodline purity. They treated her like hired help from day one, and the transition from beloved wife to household servant happened so gradually, so insidiously, that by the time Olivia realized what was happening, she was completely trapped. It started subtly. Small requests to help with minor tasks, gentle suggestions that she assist the household staff since she wasn't busy. But subtle became overt within months. Olivia found herself cooking every family meal from scratch, serving it while they ate like royalty, cleaning up afterward while they retired to the sitting room for coffee and conversation she wasn't invited to join. She scrubbed floors she'd once thought she'd walk across as the lady of the house. She washed dishes, did laundry, dusted furniture, organized closets. She became invisible, erased, nothing more than another servant in a house full of them. The family never invited her to public events, business dinners, charity galas, family gatherings with their social circle. Olivia stayed home, preparing or cleaning, never attending. While Seo Jun appeared at society functions with his family, people whispered about his mysterious wife who never appeared, who existed in theory but never in practice. She wore simple, practical clothes, while the Han women draped themselves in luxury brands. She ate after the family finished, often alone in the kitchen with the actual staff who pitied her. She slept in a separate bedroom from Seo Jun, who made it clear their marriage was one of convenience and family pressure, not affection. The only person in that entire household who treated Olivia with basic human dignity was grandmother Dae Ja. The elderly woman watched how her family treated Olivia with growing disapproval, her sharp eyes seeing what no one else bothered to notice. When the family assigned Olivia to be grandmother's primary caregiver, thinking it another demeaning task, they inadvertently gave the two women time to actually know each other. During the long afternoons when Olivia read to her in English and Korean, helped with her medications, kept her company through the lonely hours when family was too busy with their important lives to visit, grandmother saw what no one else bothered to see. Olivia was intelligent, educated, kind, and far stronger than anyone realized. "They're destroying you," Deja had said one afternoon about 4 months into. Olivia's marriage, her voice quiet but firm, her elderly eyes sharp enough to see what Olivia had been trying desperately to hide even from herself. "My family is grinding you down to nothing piece by piece, erasing who you are, and my grandson is letting them do it. Probably helping them do it." "I can handle it," Olivia had said, her voice carrying a conviction she didn't really feel, still believing somehow that she could survive this, that things would get better, that if she just tried harder, became more perfect, everything would be okay. "I just need more time. They'll accept me eventually. Love conquers all, right?" "No one can handle being erased," Deja had said, with the kind of blunt honesty that came from being 92 years old and too close to death to bother with comforting lies. "That's what they're doing, child. They're erasing you piece by piece, taking away everything that makes you who you are, until there's nothing left but a useful ghost who serves their needs and asks for nothing in return. That's not a marriage. That's slavery with better furniture." Olivia had cried then, for the first time since arriving in Korea, for the first time in months of swallowing tears and pretending everything was fine. She'd let this frail old woman who barely had the strength to lift her own teacup hold her while she sobbed out all the fear and loneliness and desperation she'd been holding inside like a dam about to catastrophically break. "Why are you kind to me?" Olivia had asked through her tears, her voice breaking on the words. "Your family hates me. They've made that perfectly clear." "Why don't you?" "Because I recognize strength when I see it," Deja had said simply, her wrinkled hand stroking Olivia's hair with a gentleness the girl's own mother had rarely shown. "Intelligence, kindness. You have all three, child. My family are fools who can't see past their prejudice and their pride. But you, Olivia Howard, are strong enough to survive them if you choose to. Remember that. When things get darkest, and they will get darker, remember that you're strong enough to survive." Those words would come back to Olivia later, in her darkest moments, giving her the strength to do what needed to be done. Drop a comment if you have someone like Grandma Deja in your life who recognizes strength when they see it. The real turning point, the moment that changed everything, happened at one of the Han family's elaborate business dinners. The Hans hosted these events monthly, carefully orchestrated evenings designed to schmooze clients and partners, maintain social connections, grease the wheels of their business empire. Olivia had spent 3 days helping prepare under Hee-jin's relentlessly critical eye, chopping vegetables, polishing silver, arranging flowers, only to be told at the last minute that she would be serving drinks during the dinner rather than attending as Seo Jun's wife. "We can't have you embarrassing us in front of important people," Hee-jin had said, her voice matter-of-fact, like she was stating an obvious truth rather than delivering a devastating insult. She'd thrust a simple black dress at Olivia, the kind of plain, unadorned garment that might as well have been a servant's uniform. "You'll serve drinks and keep your mouth shut. Don't speak unless someone speaks to you first, and even then, keep your answers brief and in Korean if possible. Your accent is embarrassing. Do you understand?" So Olivia had put on the black dress that marked her as staff rather than family, had pulled her hair back in the severe bun that Hye-jin insisted made her look more appropriate, and had spent the evening moving through the mansion's formal dining room like a ghost, pouring wine into crystal glasses worth more than her entire wardrobe, clearing plates between courses, refilling water glasses, being completely and utterly invisible to the important people whose comfort and satisfaction mattered so much more than her dignity or her humanity. She'd been refilling water glasses when she saw it happen. Seo Jun, standing at the bar in the corner of the dining room, mixing a drink for one of the guests. A tall man with sharp, intelligent features, someone Olivia didn't recognize, which meant he wasn't part of the usual circle of family friends and business associates. And while the man was distracted in conversation with another guest, while his attention was elsewhere, Seo Jun had pulled a small vial from his pocket and emptied it into the drink with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this before, who knew exactly how much to use and how to do it without being noticed. Olivia's hands had frozen on the water pitcher she was holding, ice-cold horror flooding through her veins like poison. She'd heard whispered conversations about this over the past months, fragments of discussions she wasn't supposed to understand, her Korean not quite good enough to catch everything but sufficient to get the general idea. The Han family's negotiation tactics that existed in a gray area between legal and illegal, getting rivals or difficult partners drunk or drugged enough to sign contracts they wouldn't have agreed to sober. Compromised enough to be blackmailed, vulnerable enough to be controlled, using leverage and manipulation because winning was all that mattered, because success justified any means necessary to achieve it. Seo Jun handed the doctored drink to Olivia with a stern look, his eyes carrying a clear warning. "Give this to Mr. Kang," he said quietly in Korean, nodding toward the tall stranger. "Make sure he drinks it." Olivia had accepted the glass with shaking hands, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it, must be able to see her fear and her moral dilemma written across her face, like a billboard. She walked toward the man, Mr. Kang, her mind racing. She could give him the drink, follow orders, keep herself safe. Let this stranger be drugged and exploited because it wasn't her problem, wasn't her responsibility, wasn't worth risking the little she had left, or she could do the right thing. When she reached him, she set the glass on the table beside him, leaned in as if adjusting his napkin, and whispered in English so quietly that only he could hear. "Don't drink that. It's drugged. Don't drink anything you didn't pour yourself. Leave as soon as you can." Then she'd moved away quickly, her heart in her throat, absolutely terrified of what she'd just done, of the consequences if anyone had noticed, of what Seo Jun's family would do if they found out she'd interfered with their business dealings. The man, Kang Do-yun, though Olivia wouldn't learn his name until much later, had looked at her sharply. For just a moment their eyes had met, and she'd seen understanding there, recognition, gratitude. He'd quietly excused himself shortly after, claiming a sudden business emergency. The contract negotiation fell apart spectacularly. Seo Jun's father had been volcanic with rage, demanding to know what went wrong, why the deal collapsed, whose fault it was that millions in potential revenue had walked out the door. But no one suspected Olivia. No one imagined the invisible servant girl would have the audacity or intelligence to interfere. That should have been the end of it. A small act of defiance, a tiny rebellion that no one would ever know about. Olivia had no idea she'd just saved herself. But that wasn't the end of Olivia's horrors. The worst was yet to come. Seo Jun's affair with Park Ji-woo had started slowly, insidiously. He'd introduced her as his childhood sweetheart, the girl his family had always wanted him to marry, the perfect Korean daughter-in-law who checked every box of breeding and status and cultural purity. When Seo Jun had instead chosen Olivia, a decision driven by youthful rebellion rather than love, his family had never forgiven either of them. So when Ji-woo came back into his life, they'd welcomed her with open arms. Ji-woo became a constant presence in their lives, visiting the estate regularly, treated like the daughter-in-law they wished they had while Olivia served tea like the help they believed she was. Ji-woo's cruelty was creative and constant and utterly devastating. She mocked Olivia's clothes, her posture, her accent, her worth as a human being. She made jokes about the help, forgetting her place, laughing while the family laughed with her. She'd stage elaborate moments of intimacy with Seo Jun right in front of Olivia, touching his arm, whispering in his ear, sharing inside jokes, making it absolutely clear that she was the real wife in everything but paperwork. And worst of all, She was sleeping with Seo Jun, an affair that everyone knew about that no one bothered to hide, that happened under Olivia's own roof while she was expected to smile and serve them both breakfast the next morning. But Olivia endured. She held on. She believed things could get better. She still loved him, despite everything, despite the abuse and the humiliation and the betrayal. She clung to hope like a drowning person clings to driftwood, until the day everything changed. Olivia discovered she was pregnant on a Tuesday morning in March. She'd taken the test in the bathroom of her isolated bedroom, hands shaking so badly she could barely hold it, watching the second line appear with a mixture of terror and desperate, fragile hope. Pregnant. She was going to have a baby, Seo Jun's baby, a grandchild for the Han family who valued bloodline above everything else. Surely this would change things. Surely a baby would make them see her as family, would give her value they couldn't dismiss, would transform her from inconvenient outsider to mother of the next generation, to someone who mattered, who belonged, who deserved respect. She'd planned to announce it at the family dinner that Friday night, had practiced the words in Korean until they felt natural in her mouth, had allowed herself to hope for the first time in months that everything was about to get better, that she'd finally found her place in this family, that love and motherhood would conquer their prejudice. She should have known better. That Friday evening, Olivia had dressed in one of the nicer outfits she still owned from before her marriage, before everything had been taken from her piece by piece. She'd done her hair carefully instead of pulling it back in the severe bun. She'd come to dinner nervous but excited, carrying hope like something fragile and precious and terrifyingly vulnerable. The family was already seated when she arrived. Seo Jun at his usual place, his mother at the head of the table, his sister beside her, and Ji Woo sitting in the chair that should have been Olivia's, looking radiant in a way that made Olivia's stomach clench with sudden, terrible unease. "Oh, good, you're here," Hye-jin said, barely glancing at Olivia, already dismissing her existence. "We're ready for the first course. You can start serving now." "Actually," Olivia said, her voice small but determined, her hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach, "I have something I need to tell everyone, something important that I think will make everyone happy." "I'm pregnant," Ji Woo burst out, her voice bright with manufactured excitement, her hand pressed dramatically against her own stomach. "Seo Jun and I are having a baby. Isn't it wonderful? Finally, a proper heir for the Han family." The room exploded. Hye-jin shot to her feet, tears already forming in her eyes, rushing around the table to embrace Ji Woo, like she was something infinitely precious, like she was the answer to every prayer. "Oh my God, this is wonderful, this is perfect. Finally, a grandson." Soo-ah was squealing, jumping up and down with excitement usually reserved for teenagers rather than 30-year-old women. "I'm going to be an aunt. This is the best news ever. We need to plan a baby shower immediately." Seo Jun sat there with a smile on his face that looked genuine, warm, happy, in a way Olivia had never seen him smile at her. He was accepting congratulations from his mother and sister, reaching across the table to take Ji Woo's hand in his, squeezing it tenderly, and Olivia stood frozen in the doorway, her own pregnancy announcement dying in her throat like something poisoned. She watched her husband celebrate having a baby with another woman, watched his family react with more joy than they'd shown for anything involving Olivia in 18 months of marriage. No one looked at her. No one noticed her standing there, her hand, still protectively on her stomach where her own babies grew, twins, though she didn't know that yet. No one cared that the actual wife existed in the same room as their celebration of her replacement. That night, Seo Jun came to her separate bedroom. He didn't knock. He never did, treating her space like something he owned rather than something he should respect. He carried papers in his hand, his expression businesslike, almost bored like he was handling an unpleasant administrative task rather than ending a marriage. "I'm divorcing you," he said without preamble, no softening of the blow, no pretense of regret, or even basic human decency. Ji-woo is pregnant with my child. My real child, with a proper Korean woman. We're getting married as soon as this is finalized. You need to sign these papers." He placed the divorce papers on her dresser with a decisive thud, clicking a pen and holding it out to her with the casual expectation of immediate compliance. Like, he was asking her to sign for a package delivery rather than the dissolution of their marriage. Olivia looked at the papers, at the man she'd married, at the future she'd foolishly believed they might have together. "What if I was pregnant?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, already knowing the answer but needing to hear him say it, needing to understand exactly who she'd married, who she'd loved, who she'd sacrificed everything for. The expression on Seo-jun's face would haunt her for years afterward. Disgust. Immediate, visceral disgust, as if she'd suggested something truly repulsive, something obscene and unthinkable. "That's why I was always careful," he said coldly, his tone matter-of-fact, almost clinical, like he was explaining a simple business decision. "Very careful to never risk having a child with you. The thought of my child being well, let's just say, being the help looks better on you than being a mother would. You're good at serving. Stick to what you're good at. Sign the papers and leave my house." The words hit Olivia like bullets, tearing through whatever was left of her hope, her dignity, her belief that anything good could come from this marriage, that any part of him had ever really loved her. She looked at the man she'd married, really looked at him, saw him clearly for the first time without the filter of love or hope or desperate need to believe, and she picked up the pen. Olivia signed every page, her signature growing stronger and more decisive with each one. If he didn't want her or her children, then she didn't want his name, his family, his house, his cruelty, any of it. She was done being invisible, done being diminished, done accepting treatment that no human being should endure. The next morning, Olivia packed her single suitcase with the few possessions she'd brought from America, left behind everything she'd acquired in Korea because none of it felt like hers. Anyway, and walked out of the Han mansion into a future she couldn't imagine, couldn't picture, couldn't even begin to hope for. She had $847 in her bank account, no job, no apartment, no friends in Korea, no family to call for help, and twins growing in her womb, though she wouldn't discover that for another month. She made it as far as the bus station before the reality of her situation crashed over her like a wave of ice water, pregnant, broke, alone in a foreign country where she barely spoke the language. No plan, no hope, no idea how she was going to survive the next day, much less the next 9 months. She was sitting on a bench outside the station, crying quietly into her hands, trying to figure out which direction to even walk when a car pulled up beside her. A familiar car. Grandmother Dae-ja's personal driver stepped out, approaching Olivia with the kind of professional courtesy that somehow made her cry harder. He handed her an envelope without a word, bowed slightly in the traditional way, and returned to his car, driving away before Olivia could even process what had happened. Inside the envelope was $5,000 in cash, more money than Olivia had ever held at once, and a note in shaky handwriting that made tears stream down her face. "You deserved so much better than what my family gave you. This is not charity. This is what you earned caring for me when no one else would. Please stay in touch. Let me know you're safe. Dae-ja." That money got Olivia back to America, got her a tiny apartment in a rough neighborhood where sirens wailed every night, got her through the first trimester when morning sickness was so bad she could barely work, got her to the ultrasound where she discovered she wasn't having one baby, but two. Twins. She was having twins. She'd cried in that doctor's office, overwhelmed by the impossible responsibility of raising one child alone, much less two. Grandmother Dae-ja called a week after Olivia, returned to America. The old woman had somehow gotten her new American number, had tracked her down across an ocean and 2 continents. "I want to help," Dae-ja said without preamble. "I want to send money, set up a trust, make sure you and those babies are taken care of. Please, child, let me help you. I can't accept money from your family, Olivia had said, her voice firm despite the tears streaming down her face, despite the desperation that gnawed at her every waking moment. It would feel like they still own me, like I'm still their servant, still dependent on their charity. I can't. I have to do this myself. I'm not them, Deja had protested gently, her voice carrying an ache that transcended language and culture. You're part of that family. I can't. I'm sorry. I need to prove to myself that I can survive without them, that I'm worth something on my own. Olivia had taken a shaky breath, trying to sound stronger than she felt. But I'll stay in touch, I promise. I'll let you know about the babies. When they're born, you can be part of their lives if you want. Just no money, please. I need to do this on my own. Deja had agreed, respecting Olivia's strength even as it broke her heart to imagine this girl struggling alone. 1 year after the divorce, Olivia was working 2 jobs, one at a coffee shop during the day, one cleaning offices at night, trying to survive with newborn twins who never seemed to sleep at the same time, who took turns crying through the night, who needed constant feeding and changing and attention. She was exhausted to the point of hallucination, running on 3 hours of sleep and pure willpower when Kang Do-yun walked into the coffee shop. She recognized him immediately despite the year that had passed, despite the exhaustion that made everything blur at the edges. The businessman from the dinner, the one she'd saved from being drugged, the one whose contract negotiation had fallen apart because of her warning. Olivia Howard, he said in perfect English, his expression warm, kind in a way that made her want to cry because kindness was so rare, so precious. I've been looking for you. I'm working, Olivia started, glancing nervously at her boss who frowned at employees chatting with customers. Just for a moment, Do-yun said gently. Please, I owe you a debt. You saved my company, possibly my life. That warning you gave me prevented me from signing a contract that would have destroyed everything I'd built. He glanced at the twins sleeping in a second-hand double stroller beside the counter, something soft crossing his face. May I? He gestured to an empty table. Olivia glanced at her boss again, saw his scowl deepening, knew she couldn't afford to lose this job. I really can't. Do-yun walked to the counter, pulled out his wallet, and bought a $100 gift card. Now I'm a customer, he said simply, and I'd like to sit with my friend while I enjoy my very expensive coffee. Over the next 20 minutes, he told her he'd been trying to find her for months, that he'd tracked her through public records of her return to the United States, that he wanted to thank her properly, that he owed her everything. I want to help you, he said, looking at the dark circles under her eyes, the cheap clothes, the exhaustion that radiated from every pore. Please, let me help. I don't need charity, Olivia said, pride making her voice sharp even as exhaustion pulled at every word, even as she swayed on her feet from sleep deprivation. It's not charity. You saved my business, possibly my life. I want to repay that. He paused. Please, I can see you're struggling. Let me help. Olivia told him to leave, refused his offer, went back to her double shifts and her tiny apartment and her impossible struggle to survive. But Do-yun kept showing up. At the coffee shop during her shifts, always buying something expensive, always leaving massive tips that her boss couldn't object to. At the grocery store when she was shopping, casually offering to carry bags to her car. At the park where she'd take the twins on her rare days off. Sitting on a bench nearby, never pushy, never demanding, just present. Why are you doing this? She'd finally asked after 2 months of his persistent, patient presence. Because I'm indebted to you, he said simply. And because you're stubborn as hell and clearly need help you won't ask for. And because... He paused, looking at the twins sleeping in their stroller. Because I think you're remarkable. What you did that night, warning a stranger, risking everything to do the right thing when you had nothing to gain and everything to lose. That's the kind of person I want in my life. When Min-jun developed a fever at 3 in the morning, spiking to 104 degrees, and Olivia had no car and no money for an ambulance and was paralyzed with terror, Do-yun was the only person she could think to call. He'd arrived within 20 minutes, must have broken every speed limit. He'd driven them to the emergency room, stayed through the entire terrifying night until the baby was stable and Olivia could breathe again without feeling like her chest was being crushed. She'd cried in the hospital waiting room at 6 a.m., all her carefully maintained walls crumbling under exhaustion and fear, and the realization that maybe, just maybe, this man actually cared. That his presence wasn't obligation or pity, but something real. "Thank you," she'd whispered, her voice breaking. "Thank you for being here, for showing up, for caring when you didn't have to." "Always," he'd replied simply, and something in the way he said it made her believe him. That was when Olivia stopped pushing him away. Do-yun became a constant, steady presence in their lives after that night, showing up for the twins' first birthday with thoughtful presents he'd clearly researched, helping with night feedings when Olivia was too exhausted to function safely, fixing things in her apartment that broke, the perpetually dripping sink, the window that wouldn't close, the cabinet door hanging by one hinge, teaching himself to change diapers with the same focused intensity he brought to business negotiations, watching YouTube tutorials like they were training videos for a critical business skill. The twins started calling him Uncle Yun, their first real words after Mama, and watching his face light up with pure joy every time they said it. Olivia watched him with her children, saw his genuine affection, his patience when they were difficult, his joy in their milestones, watched him with her, noticed the way he looked at her like she was something precious, something worth treasuring, someone valuable not despite her struggles, but because of her strength. She was falling in love, terrified by it, fighting against it because she'd been so catastrophically wrong about love before, but falling nonetheless. When the twins turned 3 years old, Do-yun asked her to dinner, a real date, not just friendly help or casual hanging out. "I've wanted to ask for months," he admitted, his confidence slipping for the first time, revealing nervousness underneath. "But I needed you to know this is real. Not obligation, not repayment for what you did. I'm in love with you, Olivia, with you and your boys, with your strength and your kindness and your stubborn refusal to give up. I want to be part of your lives if you'll let me. Officially. Really. Forever." They dated for 2 years, slowly, carefully building trust Olivia hadn't thought she'd ever be capable of again. Do-yun never rushed her, never demanded more than she could give, never pushed her boundaries. He just showed up every single day proving he was safe. He was real. He wasn't going anywhere. He proposed when the twins were 5 years old, both boys helping him present the ring with adorable seriousness, standing on either side of him like tiny groomsmen. "Will you marry Dad?" Ye-jun had asked, his small face solemn. "Please say yes," Min-jun had added. "We really want him to be our real dad." They married in a small ceremony with just a few close friends. No big wedding, no elaborate celebration. Just 2 people choosing each other with clear eyes and full hearts, and grandmother Dae-ja, who flew to America in secret, who cried through the entire ceremony, who held the twins afterward and whispered to them in Korean about how proud she was of their mother, how strong she was, how much she'd survived. 6 months after the wedding, Do-yun legally adopted Ye-jun and Min-jun, became their father in every way that mattered. Legally, emotionally, completely. "You're our real dad now?" Ye-jun had asked seriously, his 6-year-old face solemn. "If you want me to be," Do-yun had said, his voice thick with emotion. "We want you to be," Min-jun had confirmed, and both boys had hugged him fiercely, their small arms wrapping around him like they'd never let go. Throughout everything, grandmother Dae-ja stayed in contact. Weekly video calls without fail, always at the same time so the twins could count on it, could build their relationship with their great-grandmother. Birthday presents that arrived perfectly timed, always thoughtful, always showing how much she paid attention to what they loved. Secret visits when she traveled to the United States for medical treatment, that were really excuses to see her great-grandsons, to spend time with the only family member she actually loved. The boys grew up knowing Halmione, who loves us from far away, understanding she was family even if they'd never met the rest of the Hans, knowing she was special, was different, was theirs. But Do-yoon had been busy with more than just building a family. He'd been building a case. 6 years of investigating the Han family's business practices, 6 years of compiling evidence of fraud, embezzlement, bribery, corporate espionage, 6 years of systematically destroying their business empire piece by piece, stealing their clients, exposing their illegal practices to regulators, ensuring that when the final blow came, it would be devastating and absolute. Why, Olivia had asked when he'd finally told her what he was doing. Why spend 6 years destroying them? You don't owe me that kind of revenge. It's not revenge, Do-yoon had said. It's justice. They tried to drug me, to exploit me, to destroy my company. They abused you, broke you, threw you away. They need to face consequences, and I have the resources to make sure they do. Which brought everything full circle, back to this moment. Grandmother Dae-ja's 80th birthday party, the twins defending their mother, Seo-jun staring at his biological children in shock, and a room full of people about to have their world shattered completely. Before anyone says anything else, Grandmother Dae-ja said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade, I have things to say, important things, and you will all sit down and listen for once in your miserable, self-absorbed lives. The family reluctantly obeyed, though their expressions ranged from furious to confused to frightened. Olivia stood with her real family, Do-yoon's arm protectively around her shoulders, the twins pressed against her sides like small guards, all 4 of them a united front. 6 years ago, Grandmother began, her voice gaining strength from pure satisfaction, you treated this woman like a servant in her own home. You humiliated her, degraded her, forced her to work like hired help while her husband conducted an affair under your roof. You celebrated when he divorced her for his pregnant mistress. She paused, letting that sink in, watching their faces. What you didn't know, what you were too arrogant and self-absorbed to discover, is that Olivia was pregnant when she left. Pregnant with twins, with my great-grandsons, your grandsons. She said pointedly to Sung-min, your nephews, to Hye-jin and Soo-ah, your sons, to Seo-jun, whose face had gone absolutely gray. I've known about them since before they were born, Dae-ja continued, her satisfaction evident in every word. I've watched them grow up through video calls and secret visits. I've been part of their lives while you remained ignorant because you never bothered to check on the woman you destroyed. You never wondered if your cruelty had consequences. You just moved on, secure in your superiority. A thin man with sharp eyes stepped forward from where he'd been standing, quietly in the corner. I'm Attorney Park, he said, his voice professionally neutral. 3 months ago, Mrs. Han transferred all her assets out of the family trust, controlling interest in Han Industries, 67% of voting shares, the family estate, and all associated properties. Her personal fortune, approximately $800 million. Investment portfolios, art collections, jewelry, and various other holdings. Mother, what have you done? Sung-min's voice shook with barely controlled rage and fear. I gave it to someone who actually deserves it, Dae-ja said simply, her satisfaction evident. Someone who understands the value of family, of integrity, of treating people with basic human decency. Someone who was kind to me when all of you were too busy scheming and positioning for inheritance to actually care whether I lived or died. The lawyer opened his briefcase, removing thick legal documents that landed on the table with the finality of a judge's gavel. All transfers were completed. Legally, with multiple witnesses, medical evaluations confirming Mrs. Han's complete mental competency, and ironclad documentation that will survive any legal challenge. Mrs. Olivia Howard is now the majority shareholder and controlling member of Hahn Industries and owner of all properties previously held in the Hahn Family Trust. These transfers are irrevocable. He placed the documents on the table with a decisive thud. "You can't do this!" Sua shrieked, her voice climbing into ranges that made several guests wince. "She's not even family. She's nothing. She's more family than any of you have been in 20 years. Deja cut her off with the kind of authority that brooked no argument. "She cared for me. She let me know my great-grandsons. She forgave me for being part of a family that abused her. She deserves this. You squandered your chances." "This is insane," Hee-jin said, her voice shaking. "You're destroying our family over this woman who warned me 6 years ago that your family was trying to drug me," Do-yun interrupted calmly, his voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Who risked everything to do the right thing when she had nothing to gain and everything to lose." He pulled more documents from his jacket, spreading them across the table like a prosecutor, laying out evidence. "You tried to drug me at that business dinner. Slipped something into my drink, probably planning to get me to sign away controlling interest in my company or create compromising situations for blackmail. Your family's usual tactics." His smile was sharp, dangerous. "Olivia warned me. This woman you forced to serve drinks like a servant saved a stranger from being exploited. That's who she is." Sungmin's face had gone from pale to ashen. "I've spent 6 years returning that favor," Do-yun continued, his voice conversational despite the devastating nature of his words. "Every business deal your family lost, every investor who pulled out, every regulatory investigation, every contract that mysteriously fell through, that was me, all of it, systematically dismantling everything you built, piece by piece." Do-yun pulled out another folder, this one thicker. "I've compiled quite a case file. 6 years deep. The prosecutors are very interested in what we've documented." "You can't prove anything," Seung-min said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Can't I?" Do-yun smiled. "Wire transfers to offshore accounts, emails discussing bribing government officials, recorded phone calls about corporate espionage, video evidence of attempting to drug business competitors, tax evasion documentation. The list goes on." As if on cue, a woman in a sharp suit stepped into the ballroom, flanked by 2 people who could only be law enforcement. "Prosecutor Kim Hae-won," she introduced herself, showing her credentials with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Mr. Han Sung-min, Mr. Han Seo-jun, I have warrants for your arrest on charges of corporate fraud, embezzlement, attempted assault via drugging, bribery, and obstruction of justice." The room erupted into chaos. "This is outrageous!" Sung-min roared, his face flushing red with rage and fear. "I'll have your job. I'll destroy you. Do you know who I am?" "You're a criminal," Prosecutor Kim said calmly, professionally, her tone suggesting she'd heard this exact speech from 100 other wealthy men who thought they were above the law. "And your wealth and connections won't save you this time. Mr. Kong Do-yun has provided us with 6 years of meticulously documented evidence. Everything is airtight. The case is unbeatable." She nodded to the officers who moved forward with handcuffs. "You can't do this!" Hye-jin shrieked, her voice hitting octaves that probably frightened dogs 3 neighborhoods away. "The scandal, the shame, our reputation—" "Your reputation," Olivia said quietly, but her voice carried, "is that you're cruel, corrupt people who abuse anyone weaker than yourselves. This isn't creating a scandal. This is revealing the truth that was always there." As officers handcuffed both Sung-min and Seo-jun, reading them their rights in calm, professional voices that suggested they did this every day, Prosecutor Kim looked at Olivia with something like respect. "Mrs. Howard, thank you for your cooperation in this investigation. Your testimony and the documentation you provided were instrumental in building this case." "It was my pleasure," Olivia said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. Seo Jun stood frozen as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, the sound impossibly loud in the sudden silence. He looked at the twins, his biological sons, the children he'd rejected before they existed, and something in his face crumbled, completely. "Please," he said, his voice breaking in a way that might have been pathetic if it wasn't so well-deserved. "Please wait." The twins stopped, turned back to look at him, not because they cared, but because they'd been raised with manners, with basic human courtesy that this man had never shown their mother. "I'm your father," Seo Jun said desperately, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Your real father. Biologically. I didn't know you existed. If I had known, if someone had told me, I would have—" "You did know," Yejun said, his young voice clear and devastating in its simple honesty. "Mom asked you. She said, 'What if I was pregnant?' And you said that you didn't want to have children with the help." Min-jun finished his brother's sentence, their twin communication making the accusation even more powerful. The words Seo Jun had used, thrown back at him by the children he'd rejected before they drew breath. Seo Jun's face crumpled. He dropped to his knees, actually dropped to his knees right there in the ballroom with everyone watching, in front of his biological sons, who looked at him like he was a stranger. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears streaming down his face in a display of emotion that was 6 years too late and completely worthless. "I'm so sorry. I made a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life. Please, please give me a chance to be your father, to know you, to—" "No," both twins said simultaneously, their voices firm, certain, undeniably final. They looked at each other, that twin communication that needed no words, then back at the man kneeling before them. "We have a dad," Yejun said firmly, his small hand reaching for Do-yun, "a real one who loves us." "We don't need another one," Min-jun added, his other hand finding Do-yun's as well, "especially not one who made our mom cry." They turned away from Seo Jun without another word, without looking back, walking to stand with Do-yun and Olivia, their real family, the people who'd chosen them, who loved them, who'd earned the right to be called parents. Behind them, Seo Jun remained on his knees, broken by the rejection of children he'd thrown away before they existed, destroyed by consequences he'd spent 6 years pretending didn't exist. The officers pulled him to his feet, leading him away with his father. The party guests watched in stunned silence as the Han patriarchs were led out in handcuffs, as prosecutors followed with boxes of evidence, as everything they'd built crumbled in a single night. "Wait!" Ji-woo called out desperately, her voice climbing, losing all pretense of dignity. "This isn't fair. I didn't do anything wrong. The fake pregnancy was— I was just trying to protect what was mine. What was yours?" Olivia turned to look at her, and her expression was ice. "Seo Jun was never yours. I was his wife. You were his mistress. You lied, manipulated, destroyed a marriage for a man who's being arrested for fraud. Congratulations. You won exactly what you deserved." Olivia looked at grandmother Dae-ja, who sat in her wheelchair with a peaceful smile on her weathered face. "Thank you," Olivia said softly, kneeling beside the old woman's chair. "For everything. For being kind when no one else was. For staying in my life when you didn't have to. For this." She gestured at the legal documents, the chaos, the justice. "You earned it," Dae-ja said simply, her frail hand touching Olivia's cheek with infinite gentleness. "Every bit of it. You showed me more kindness in 18 months than my family has in 18 years. You let me know my great-grandsons. You forgave me for being part of a family that hurt you. This is what you deserve." "Can we go home now, Mama?" Yejun asked quietly, tugging on Olivia's dress. "This place makes me sad. Our home is happy." "Yes, baby," Olivia said, standing and taking his hand. "We can go home." They walked out of the Han estate together, Olivia, Do-yun, Yejun, and Min-jun. A family built on choice instead of blood, on love instead of obligation, on truth instead of lies. Behind them, they left a family in ruins, facing consequences decades in the making. Ahead of them lay their life in Beverly Hills, in the home they'd built together, imperfect but real, messy but honest, everything the Han family had never been and never could be. As they reached Do-yoon's car, Olivia turned back one last time. The mansion loomed against the Seoul skyline, all marble and money and misery wrapped in expensive architecture. She'd feared this place once, feared these people, feared her own inadequacy and unworthiness. Now she just felt free. No regrets? Do-yoon asked softly, opening the car door for her with the kind of casual courtesy that had become second nature to him. Not a single one, Olivia said firmly, settling into the passenger seat. They gave me hell, and I turned it into heaven. That's the best revenge. Do-yoon laughed, pure and genuine and full of love, and leaned in to kiss her. I love you, Olivia Howard, every fierce, strong, beautiful part of you. I love you too, she whispered against his lips. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for making sure they could never hurt us again. Always, he promised, and she knew he meant it. They drove away from the Han estate as the sun set over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. In the back seat, the twins chattered about wanting ice cream for dinner, their voices bright with childish happiness that knew nothing of the darkness their mother had survived. Olivia laughed at something Min Jun said, and Do-yoon reached over to take her hand, and somewhere behind them, in a mansion full of expensive things and cheap people, the Han family began the long, painful process of facing the monsters they'd become. But that was their story to finish. Olivia had already written her ending, and it was beautiful. 2 weeks later, Olivia sat in the CEO's chair of Han Industries, looking at the quarterly reports that told a story of corruption, mismanagement, and systematic fraud. Do-yoon sat across from her, his own laptop open, helping her understand the full scope of what she'd inherited. It's worse than we thought, he said quietly. They've been embezzling for years. The company is barely solvent. We'll need to do major restructuring just to keep it from collapsing completely. Can it be saved? Olivia asked, looking at the numbers that represented people's jobs, their livelihoods, their families. With the right leadership and some significant changes? Yes. It'll take time and a lot of work, but the core business is sound. It's just been rotted from the inside by corruption. Do-yoon looked at her seriously. Are you sure you want to do this? You could sell it, take the money, never think about the Hans again. Olivia thought about that, thought about walking away, about taking the easy path. No, she said finally. Grandmother gave me this for a reason. She wanted me to fix what they broke. And these employees, they don't deserve to lose their jobs because the Han family are criminals. I'm going to rebuild it, the right way, with integrity. Do-yoon smiled at her, that soft, proud smile that still made her heart skip. Then let's get to work. So what did you think? Drop a comment with your favorite moment. Hit like if this story gave you the justice you needed. And subscribe because I have so many more stories about strong people who survived impossible situations and came out winning. Share this with someone who needs to know that surviving cruelty makes you stronger, not broken. Until next time, stay strong, stay fierce, and never let anyone dim your light. To everyone out there who's been underestimated, dismissed, told you're not enough, you are enough. You are more than enough. Your circumstances don't define your worth. Your past doesn't dictate your future. And sometimes, the people who treat you worst end up giving you the greatest gift, the motivation to prove them wrong.